Okie dokie, we are live, everyone. Welcome to the weekly recap show. I think that it's showing Sarah there. Hi, Sarah. I'm not sure why it's not picking up my Oh, I know why it's not. Okay, so let me just do this for a second, and this should help.
We'll fix all this in post.
We'll fix all this in post. Oh no, we're live. All right, so it's not actually showing me up there, and I'm not quite sure why. But that's all right. So you guys just chat amongst yourselves, and I'll just be here off camera. But we are here talking about a bunch of different topics. In fact, should I just log off and start again?
I can see you for what it's worth.
I see you just fine. Yeah.
Really? It's okay. So it's just disconcerting from my end. So we've got a ton of stuff to cover. On this show today, we've got China just deregulated crypto. Well, made it legal. Before they had this big ban, it was very ambiguous. But I just want to welcome all the guests onto the show. We've got a stellar lineup for you today, talking about all of the important news from the week. So welcome Zafoid, otherwise known as Chris Karabat.
Hey there.
He's from Smart Cash. We have Chris Pacia from Open Bazaar. We have Craig. Is your last name Cobb? I just presume it is because you have the podcast Trader Cobb. So I guess that's always a presumption that I made.
Very creative name.
Absolutely. So check out his podcast if you haven't already. And of course, Sarah Blinko, welcome back to the show. It's Thanks. Wonderful having you all here.
Thanks for having us.
Super. So let's go ahead right off the bat and talk about some of the things that have been going on in the news. Let's start with China. So China has had this dubious relationship with cryptocurrency. It is, it is so popular in China with mining and hardware coming out of there. And the government cracked down hard. They made it illegal to own any cryptocurrency. And they've actually just lifted the Bitcoin ban. Individuals and businesses can now own currencies legally. So what do you guys think about that?
I think people are making a bit much of this. It's really a ruling on a lawsuit that said that if one guy makes a contract with the other guy regarding cryptocurrency, the other guy just can't take and walk away the cryptocurrency because the central bank said it was illegal as money. It's still a vague law. It's still not entirely sure what will happen to you as you use crypto and try to buy stuff with it. It is still property, which is a step forward at least, but it's still a vague statement from a totalitarian regime that likes vague statements.
Fair enough. That's a good point. I mean, to be honest, I expected, it seems like pretty big news because we've seen such dramatic market movements in the past. Everything coming out of China, like China bans it. Oh, we see it completely drop. And I thought, coming back, China is now not banned it anymore. Maybe we might see a bit of a spike, but we haven't really. The markets have been like, there's more news.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're mandating all exchanges and all people to have KYC on every single trade and account that they do, which for the Chinese doesn't make any sense, right? Because they're already tracked fully, and to have a pseudo-anonymous crypto was a little bit more fun than being tracked on every transaction that they're doing. So that's, they couple with the legality with, we'll track everything you do from here on out.
Right.
Yeah. So the word I have from sorry.
No, go ahead.
The word I had from a couple exchanges working on pairs, or however you pronounce the currency name, is that the KYC process is really quite straightforward in China because they have all the information.
That's a pretty good point. Like, we know everything about you and have been watching you for a long time. So don't even worry about giving us all your information. We have it. It's a new take, makes it easier on all of us. So, I mean, I'm disappointed that things haven't rallied a little bit, but you're absolutely right, Chris. I think that you need to take everything coming out of China with a grain of salt because the government doesn't have a history of having, good private property rights, having good respect for law. They can change their mind very easily, and there's really no repercussions for the people in charge. So we'll see what happens. Have we seen any uptick in movement of Bitcoin? It's down.
It's actually down 1.25% today. And reacted, negatively.
Do you think everyone went like, oh, China hasn't banned cryptocurrency anymore. It's a trap. And then they were like, was it like a big red flag for them? And they're like, okay, no one touch anything. I don't know what's going on. Like, is that what happened?
It could be. It's just, I mean, one of the frustrating things at the moment is that it's been sitting in this range for so long, and we finally had the chance to potentially move more than one or two higher highs and higher lows to just sort of get a bit of momentum, and it failed. So we're back into no man's land again on all time frames and just scratching our heads going, okay, more of this chop, I guess.
Well, at the same time, we kind of have some nice stability, and we have for a while. Like, I remember when it crashed from 1,000 and then went all the way down to like 200 for a while. It was really stable. It's like sitting there, and then it kind of gradually increased, like sitting at 300 for a really, like a year, 2 years, however long it was. That's really stable money right there. It makes it very easy to make transactions. So are we upset that we kind of have just currency that's been pretty stable?
Depends what you do with it. I mean, for me, I'm a trader. I want it to move.
Fair enough. All right, Bitcoin markets, you heard the man. All right, so moving on then, talking about regulation in the other totalitarian regime, I mean in United States of America, we have the SEC, which charges EtherDelta founder over unregistered securities exchange. So that's pretty big news. Do you want to chat about that, Sarah?
I think it's interesting because it's like a developer creates a smart contract, and then a developer creates a SaaS, and then the SEC charges the developer. So I think we're in interesting times now where just because you're creating open source software or you're creating smart contracts that you think will kind of take you away from the risk, that might not necessarily be the case. Because they're even saying just the forward-facing UI, UX that connects the users are totally against the law unless they register them. So I think we're going to have an interesting next few years of if we can actually get a forward-facing UI UX to work on a truly decentralized exchange that the SEC can't then tag on to one developer, we might have a chance of it. But if we're going to continue on the current trend, I think we're going to see more people paying. The fine was actually pretty small, which I thought was pretty interesting. It was like $75,000 fine. So that for me is a positive sign that they're going to try to regulate a little bit. I think that truly decentralized exchanges are really the only way that we're going to kind of overrun this chaos of the SEC being completely incompetent.
So
right.
I heard about this. I didn't look into it too much. But so what's the issue there? Is it they're running a web UI that you have to access it through their site? Is that how it works? It's not a downloadable app, is it?
I don't actually know. I've never actually used EtherDelta.
No, you don't need to download it.
It's an ERC20. It is a secondary market trading ERC20 tokens. It doesn't say anything about whether it's
so if you're providing like a web portal, you kind of like own the web property. That's where it starts to like muddle things a little bit. Also, were they taking fees off of that too? That they might get hurt because of that?
I presume so, because it said that they had to pay $300,000 in disgorgement, so they're getting profits somehow.
So I would be very surprised if, I mean, this kind of goes into what we do on Open Bazaar, but I would be very surprised if someone created just software that interacted with a smart contract and just put it out there, and that was the end of it, if the SEC would still go to them in the same way that they did with EtherDelta. Because at that point, it bumps up against the like code is free speech concept, and you're not taking a cut, you're not maintaining any servers or managing any websites or anything like that. People just compile and run locally. I'd be interested to see, I don't think they would get involved in that case, but.
So why EtherDelta? Like what? Like I mean, I was listening intently there, trying to work out why. Like, what have they done? Like, was there any catalyst for it to be them over anyone else?
They're older, more well known than some of the other guys out there, and since they were older, they had the opportunity to be trading earlier, and they did have trades involving tokens that the SEC called securities.
Right.
And they should have had prior knowledge based on earlier statements, and so they knowingly allow trading of securities.
Right. And so now we have sort of a battle between centralized exchanges, hybrid models, which are kind of these decentralized exchanges, but are facilitated by a central app or website, and then completely decentralized exchanges. So obviously the hybrid models seem to be more frictionless than completely decentralized exchanges right now. But I'm hoping that we'll see a time when those decentralized ones become easier to use, because otherwise, I mean, I think that with the SEC looking at exchanges and these hybrid exchanges so closely, we're either going to see them all become regulated, and so there'll be no securities on there, or they will be, they'll follow the guidelines of the SEC and become registered, or we'll just see everyone going across to decentralized exchanges.
Well, the decentralized exchanges aren't there yet, sadly. I'm a big fan and hopeful that they will come, and that, along with atomic exchanges and more of the things that allow for people to easily trade with other individuals without having to go between a middleman. But one of the favorite things about this particular article that I liked was the very last line that said, the SEC noted that Coburn cooperated with the regulator, resulting in a lower penalty than may have otherwise been administered. So make sure you cooperate with your government official who's here to help you.
Who's here to help you. Yeah, I like that was in there. This sort of very friendly nudge. It sort of reminds me of the friendly nudge that the World Monetary Organization, whatever it is, gave to the Marshall Islands. They're like, oh, we really encourage you not to support cryptocurrency because America might not like it, and you might be cut out from trade with America or other things. Just helpful advice there. You're welcome, guys. So yeah, I mean, it is very clear that the SEC is not going to let these things slide. So I think the tech is going to have to get better if people want freedom, or they just have to toe the line. And maybe that's where we're at. Or maybe people will have more luck with like going after better regulation. People like Caitlin Long who are doing amazing work, trying to get regulation in line with what blockchain developers want, etc. Sorry, I cut you off, Chris.
No.
No.
Oh, you're good.
No. All right. Let's move on to the next one. We have a little bit of financial news. So Goldman Sachs, they further their crypto foray, and Coinbase secures a ton of funding. They have a giant evaluation. And so regarding Goldman Sachs, they've just, did I just say Goldman Sachs? That was a Freudian slip. I didn't mean that.
Just the truth.
Absolutely. They just onboarded exclusive investors for their Bitcoin products. So thoughts about this?
I personally think it's a step in the right direction. But, I'm a trader. I want volume. I want volatility. I want easy to trade products. So purely from a selfish point of view, for the way I operate within the market, I would love to see it step up. We talked about exchanges before and the progress they need to make to be decentralized. There's a lot of progress they need to make to allow us to trade properly. I mean, still, it's very difficult to manage your entry, stop, and targets, to manage your risk exactly precisely, which you can do on literally any other traditional market platform. So as these big players start to step into the space, it does two things. One, it allows them to have a budget to create if that's what they wish to do. But also, it brings a level of credibility, which, as much as we sit back and we go, well, we don't need them, it'd be nice to sort of have other people go, well, Goldman Sachs are there, Fidelity are there, and then you can start listing off these companies that are legit. Well, I mean, let's not throw that word around too freely. Yeah, regulated, correct. That sort of give people a little bit more willingness, I suppose, to go, well, what is this crypto thing, and start their search to work out what's actually going on. So I think it helps people to understand more, learn more, respect it more, gives a bit of credibility, and possibly it might even give us some better trading instruments down the track. So I'm happy. I hope no one's going to throw something at me.
Throw all the things at him. Go. No. What did the rest of you think? Sarah and I think Zafoy, I think Sarah, you put forward this topic. So what are your thoughts?
I don't think that we need any external institutions to validate crypto. I think that we're doing a fine job at pushing it forward, but I agree. More trading tools allows for less risk for traders and the greater ability to control the type of trades that you want to make. For me, I think that the ecosystem is going to develop either way. And companies like Fidelity, on the other hand, have been pushing forward for a long time. And Goldman Sachs is just a little bit behind, and they know that. And so I wish them the best. But I think that ultimately, just like governments, they'll probably always be a couple steps behind.
I think you're probably right there. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Concerns I have involving the big banks. I mean, for a long time I've said I hate, the Bitcoiner people who go and say, Bitcoin will save us from the banks, and I know we need the banks to save us. But I don't like that thought process. But what I'm concerned about is the more institutional investors get involved with their more sophisticated tools, that it'll stratify how trading is done, and that you'll have the big money accredited investors trading through all the fancy tools with Goldman Sachs or whoever, and then us peons will be stuck with the slow, outdated old tools and not ever be able to keep up. And then you'll just have it the way it is right now, where you have to go through a gatekeeper to not get all your trades stolen out from under you by the rapid whatever the phrase is for the people who trade everything rapidly, and the automated transactions to get in between
high frequency trading.
Thank you for that terminology that was not coming to my head. Yes, get in front of all the high frequency traders. So that is a concern I have in the long term. I'm hoping that we as a group of people can keep the tech flowing so they do not have that advantage. But I do fear that once the SEC sees these big boys getting more seriously in there, they go, okay, well, that's the right way to do it. The rest of you guys are illegal and will be fined to death.
That is a concern.
Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's kind of like, I'm kind of ambivalent on the whole thing, to be honest. If institutional players are coming on and saying, oh, we want to get involved with this currency you guys are of your own volition using, that you created to give you more freedom, great. Well, sure, you can join in the fun too. Like, it kind of doesn't really mean much to me who's involved, just as long as this thing exists and it's an option and an alternative to the existing financial structure. But we'll see. I mean, as you suggested, Zaphoid, there might be some negative consequences as people, start to set up. You get that regulatory capture. You get the established industries who come in and say, let's create these rules to protect people and keep competitors out. So it is definitely a concern. We'll just have to see what happens and make sure, as you said, Sarah, the tech always stays one step ahead. Let's move on. Oh, actually, I did want to mention briefly Coinbase. So anyone have any thoughts about their recent giant valuation and the latest funding round?
So it's a massive round for a Series E, 300 million at 8 billion valuation. I mean, I think that they're positioning themselves to add a bunch new assets. At one point, I read last week that it was going to be 300 new assets that were going to go on to Coinbase. Now, I don't know if that was actually true, if it's just like chaos in Twitter.
There's no chaos in Twitter, Sarah.
It was on Twitter. It is true.
Yeah, exactly. It's on Twitter. It's true. So it'll be really interesting to see what they actually do now, instead of only having, a very limited scope of functionalities for their users and playing bank for all of them.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And they did just, we're going to talk about it a little later, but maybe we can talk about it now. So they actually just listed BAT, Basic Attention Token, after months of speculation. So they are slowly adding them. I think currently they're thinking about adding, we've got Stellar, we've got Cardano, we've got Zcash. So these are all things that they've been thinking about for a while. So will be interesting to see, now that they've secured this funding, what's going to happen there if they expand to these other currencies.
So far, they announced that list several months ago, and they've crossed off the first two off the list. So it kind of supports the next three being fairly likely. The only difference being is the first two are both ERC20 tokens, which they've talked about wanting to get more into for quite a while. And these others are their own chains. So that's a separate step for them. But, ZRX was,
I also don't think it's very easy for them to, well, I mean, maybe with $300 million that helps, but integrating coins, I mean, they're very rigorous when it comes to integrating new coins, and they've had like a near perfect security record that we know of. I know friend Josh works there. He says they generate something like, I don't know, like 2 terabytes of logs per day, something like that.
I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think it's like I just made a couple of videos recently letting people know how to get involved if they're an absolute beginner. I always recommend Coinbase. People hate on me for that. They're like, it's too big. We don't like big things. And they're playing by the rules in government and we don't like that. Like, I totally get that. And I totally get that it's, if you're familiar with crypto, you hold your own keys. It's just a smarter thing, especially if you're using cryptocurrency for freedom, which is why a lot of us are. If you're a beginner, Coinbase is fantastic. As you said, Chris, they have a great record with security. It's so much better. Like, if my grandmother is going to buy crypto, which she absolutely is not because she doesn't even have a computer. But if she were, I would send it to Coinbase. I wouldn't say, well, here's some hardware wallets that I would recommend. Like, I'd use something where she could like link her bank account,
I think that there's another option besides Coinbase now, which is like Abra.
Right, yeah.
I think that those are like just as easy to use and a little bit less let's just say like coercive in nature of stealing all your information and then giving it directly to the government. So there's definitely other options.
And that's getting worse and worse. Like, I was just had a conversation with people today about what's going on in Australia with them putting backdoors in every device that you have, and it's terrifying. And I mean, if Australia sets that precedent, that's probably coming to the rest of the world pretty soon, where you're going to have to be careful with the hardware wallets that you use. You're going to have to be careful with every application you use. A lot of them have gag orders. A lot of them can't talk about when information's been compromised. So just regardless, be aware of that and just be really, really careful with everything. But let's move on, talking about something a bit more fun. So CryptoKitties. We love talking about CryptoKitties. So they raised $15 million from Venrock, Google, Samsung, and more.
How and why?
Because digital assets are the future, Greg. They're the future.
To be fair, they're the only one who've really done anything terribly popular with the Ethereum blockchain.
Yeah.
I think Numerai is right up there. Numerai is using, I mean, Numerai has massive amounts of data scientists collecting and creating data models that then the fund is traded upon. So I think that's like actually like a true legitimate use case on top of Ethereum, not just CryptoKitties. Like, I love kitties and all, but I don't know about 15 million.
If you asked 10 crypto holders if they knew Numerai or CryptoKitties, which one are they more likely to have used themselves?
Depends on if they're a trader or if they're a speculator.
Just saying,
I definitely think that we're going to see a whole new era of digital assets becoming super popular because we can. If I'm going to have tickets to Taylor Swift, do I want just a QR code on my phone? Do I want a printout ticket, or do I want a digital asset that'll get me into the event that I can keep for forever, and maybe it evolves over time as I nurture it, and maybe I'm going to want the digital asset. These things are going to be coming up. Like, I was on the Contra cruise recently, and I was chatting to this lady who was addicted to, I think it's called Flow Pets or something, or
like a Tamagotchi type thing.
Yeah, where you have these sites where you build these dogs and you feed them, and like it's really adorable.
And she was outside?
She was. Although she wanted to get back to her room to get back to her computer. No, she was absolutely delightful. And I just see something like that, like going to the blockchain, make these actual digital assets that can be converted into real dollars. Like, she said she was making a ton of money on this site, but it's like flow money or flu money or whatever it is. So she couldn't actually use it in the real world. And if this was actually a currency that she could then sell on an exchange, I think that's kind of awesome. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Block V is working on that with concert tickets and other assets that are collectible, and I think they're leading that and will continue to push forward. And I really look forward to having a digital asset that isn't just like monetary based, because it'll be fun to hold it and maybe trade it or exchange it for a different asset, right?
Absolutely. Because cryptocurrency and blockchain tech is fun. it isn't just dry and boring. Like, it is really fun. So I'm excited about that too. I want to move on though, because I want to spend a little bit of time talking about something that is probably all over our Twitter feeds and all over our news feeds right now.
Angry man.
That's it, the angry man. And I'm not talking about Muriel, I'm talking about the other angry man. So we have the Bitcoin Cash fork coming up. And the last time I used that word, I got a whole bunch of hate on my feed, and everyone's like, it's not a fork. Craig said there's not going to be a fork. You're disingenuous. And every news outlet at the moment is saying, like, November 15th is the fork. And it's just this thing. So let's first of all, all right, I'm going to ask you, Chris, like, can you put some clarity on this fork? And is it a fork? Why are people saying it's not a real fork if every media outlet is calling this a fork?
Yeah. So I guess just a little background. Last time you and I talked, there was like prospects, I guess, for potential multiple forks, right? Because we were talking about there was this split between nChain and the other developers. But then there was even some contention among the rest of the developers over the canonical ordering. And since we talked, that's kind of that contention between the other Bitcoin Cash developers has more or less been resolved. That I guess the people who were objecting to the canonical transaction ordering kind of capitulated and kind of said, you know, it's not worth fighting over, sort of deal. You know, it's a small enough change that, you know, it's not the end of the world, you know, even for people who kind of initially objected to it. So now it's kind of united everybody against Craig Wright and nChain. And so it's really, I mean, almost in my opinion, it's like 95% of the Bitcoin Cash community, it seems like, versus like 5% who are supporters of Craig Wright for some bizarre reason.
Yeah, I can't figure that out, especially when you look at his recent tweet. So he is basically talking about suing people and destroying Bitcoin, and like, it's my way or the highway type rhetoric. Like, I am very much opposed to using patents and IP as a way to make people suffer and to like safeguard property. I'm against IP in general, but like, he's literally talking about like class action suits. I mean, you've all probably read this, like his final tweet in this thread: the developers in ABC will be able to be held personally liable. Oh, I do have a master's in law on just this area.
That made me cringe. That part, I just went, man, you've just hit like the all-time douchebag award right there. Like, what an absolute clown. Oh, by the way, I'm a very intelligent person. Just wanted to let you all know that.
I don't know.
Come on, man.
He was talking about all his degrees, you know, that one.
It does seem that this
my daddy went to this school.
It does seem that it's like the last resort for him, right? If he thought he was going to win the hash war, he wouldn't be putting these threats on the internet saying like, I'm going to sue you if you go near this, so don't you dare even try to go near it, and just let us win the hash war. Like, I mean, it seems really ridiculous. So
I guess to answer your other question, like, is there going to be a fork? This is basically a line that Craig has made up, that there will be no fork. He's like made this up, and it's just like everything else, he just makes it up, and then his followers just go and repeat it. And you know, they have his chain has incompatible consensus rules with, you know, the chain that everyone else is going to be following. That by definition is a fork. And this kind of leads into like, Craig is just, he's this massive fallacy factory when it comes to like economics and how Bitcoin works and all this stuff. So he holds this notion. I'll call it like the labor theory of value of Bitcoin, right? He thinks that when you mine a chain, that dictates to the market how the market's supposed to value your coin, right? And that's not how valuation works. Like, you can't just say, hey, I'm going to put a whole bunch of hashing power on this particular chain, therefore the market's going to value it. And so he thinks, like, even the term hash war is a propaganda term that he coined. There isn't going to be a hash war. That what's going to happen, you know, this was obvious even before Poloniex listed the stuff recently. But you know, someone asked me the other day what I thought Bitcoin SV, the BSV, would trade at. And I said maybe like 10 to 20% of, the Bitcoin ABC side. And, if you look on Poloniex, they're already have a little bit of trading, low volume, but it's about 10%. Bitcoin SV is about 10% of the, the ABC side. And so the result of that is going to be if Craig and them move all their hashing power onto Bitcoin SV, even if that Bitcoin SV gets a majority hashing power,
Hi, Abigail.
even if they get a majority hashing power, Craig and Calvin are going to be mining at a massive loss. I mean, they're looking at possibly losing $500,000 a day, like $15 million a month to mine Bitcoin SV. And that's just not sustainable. And everyone's going to know that. So you just don't like win, the ticker symbol or take over the other chain just because you have more hashing power. And that even assumes that they're even going to get the majority hashing power, which seems unlikely because when they take all their hashing power and move it on the Bitcoin SV, that just makes the other side of the chain more profitable and attracts more hashing power over from the core side. So it's just one fallacy after another, and it's leading to this crescendo where he thinks he can just kind of dictate to the market how it values the coin. And it's pretty amazing. Like, people have asked him, like, don't you think your toxic personality and your toxic behavior is like ruining the chances for Bitcoin SV to succeed? And his response is like, well, hashing power is what matters.
No, isn't his response to just block the people who ask that
too? But like,
right, and that's it. Sorry, keep going.
No, it's just he just has this notion that like hashing power dictates to people how to value the coin, which is just completely not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had an interesting development as well. So before, like, I've always wondered why Roger Ver was siding with Craig Wright. That always surprised me. And so this recent news where Roger put out this blog, I think it was yesterday, where he's saying, listen, it's not easy to admit this, but I think I've been fooled. A lot of red flags. I'm seriously doubting his technical capabilities. Anytime someone asks him like a technical question, he like blocks the conversation, walks out, et cetera, et cetera. So he has essentially like disowned him at this stage, which I think is a really positive development.
That's good to hear. Good people in the space shooting bad people in the space and then leaving them to rot.
Yeah. Right. And did everyone see the letter from the email from Craig Wright to Roger Ver? I'm going to read it out to you if you have not, because it's
careful. You might get demonetized if you quote it word for word.
Because it's charming. I'll beep out the expletives with Abigail's barks, like because that's kind of the feeling of this email. A lot of barking. So it says, if you want a war, I will do 2 years of no trade, nothing. In the war, no coin can trade. If you want ABC, you want shit coins. I didn't bleep that, sorry. Welcome to bankruptcy. It was nice knowing you. Bitcoin will die before ABC shits on it. I will see BCH trade at 0 for a few years. Will you? Side with ABC. You hate Bitcoin. You are my enemy. You have no effing idea what this means. You will. I am Satoshi. Have a nice life. You will now discover me when pissed off. And no, you could have had proof. Your choice.
Oh, could this be in a movie, please?
That was beautiful. Oh, God.
I could, except for the expletives, I could see my 4-year-old doing that, saying, I am Satoshi. I am.
I am Satoshi. Have a nice life. Yeah, so that's where we're at. So, I mean, it's no wonder that Roger is now distancing himself, and it's about time. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, and elsewhere he said things like, he said to people in the chat, like, either I win or I'm going to destroy everything.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. And all of the people who were saying, like, because we mentioned him like patent trolling in the last video we did like a month ago or 2 months ago, Chris, and everyone was saying like, guys, you're lying to everyone, being disingenuous. He's not a patent troll. He said anyone can use this technology if they're using Bitcoin Cash. It's like, guys, He's setting the terms of what Bitcoin
Yeah.
Cash is. He's deciding. So what he's actually saying is nothing to do with the technology. He's saying anyone who goes against me being in control and being in power, I will destroy. I'm sorry, but this is not
That's
a
exactly
libertarian
it, yeah.
idea.
Sounds like
This is-
somebody else, right?
yeah, it is not like, it's nothing to do with freedom. It's nothing to do with the ethos of Bitcoin. This is a currency for people who want to gain back financial autonomy, not who want to be under the thumb of some crazy guy who writes 4-year-old emails.
Yeah, and that's why it's so like obvious that Bitcoin SV, like who wants to use that? You have a coin that's going to be mined 100% by him and Calvin. It's going to be, he's the dictator of the development. He decides what goes into the protocol, and he's got severe mental issues, right? And so who's going to want to use this thing? And I don't know if you saw today, even today, he's going on about the lost coins. Did you hear about this? So it's funny because Satoshi was asked about coins that are lost, and his response was like, well, it's no big deal because it just increases the value of everyone else's coins, so you could think of it as a donation. And Craig's going on about how this breaks the monetary system and all of this, like completely opposite of what Satoshi said. And so much so that he writes this blog post saying we're going to be allowing miners to reclaim coins that have been sitting idle for a while, right? That miners are just going to be able to take them as their own. And of course, because he's going to be the only miner, it's going to be him taking everyone's coins, including Satoshi's. That'll be the first ones to go. And reallocate to himself. And like this is such a bad idea. And it was just one fallacy after another in there. And it's not like this is a new idea. It's been around a long time, and it's amazing because he holds this view that like Bitcoin was perfect when it was released at version 0.1.
Yeah, what's with that?
But then we have to have this major change to the protocol where miners can reclaim these lost coins or whatever, which was clearly not anywhere remotely close to what the protocol looked like at 0.1. So yeah, he's just all over the map. And
why is he getting so much attention? He seems like a complete loser. Like he really doesn't seem like he gets it. He can't articulate his conversation. He throws his toys out of the pram.
And he's plagiarizing like crazy. Have you seen all the plagiarism he's been doing? Like there's been some Reddit users have been digging up his plagiarism. So he like publishes these like quasi-academic works, I guess throughout his career. And people have like gone through and they find that he's just like lifting paragraphs from, other papers without giving the authors credit. But it's even worse. It's not like he just forgot to give the author credit. He's actively like changing words in the sentences to their synonym to avoid like plagiarism detection. Right?
So clever. He's so sneaky. So Sarah just had to leave. She had to head off halfway through. So see you, Sarah. We adore you. Thank you for being on. And I do want to move the topic along as well. So Chris and I will actually be doing a live stream next week, talking more in depth about the fork, talking about what's going on in Bitcoin Cash. We'll have an entire hour dedicated to that. If you guys want to tune in, I'll let you know when that's going to be. But there's so much to talk about with this. It just is this ongoing saga. But I do have some other things that I want to cover as well. So let's talk about like with regard to the fork. So crypto exchange Poloniex announces pre-fork trading for Bitcoin Cash. So while we're on the topic, like let's just mention this. This seems pretty nice. I mean, their stance is we're not taking a side. We're going to let the market decide. So I really like that idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean,
Sure. More trading.
Yes.
I'm sure you like that, don't you, Todd?
Yeah, I'm good. Like, I mean, I won't be touching it. That's for sure. It's not going to have enough data for me. But I like the idea of choice, and it's just a smart play by them. We're not going to decide. You can decide. We want to be friends. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a smart bit of business. It's really simple, straightforward, and well done.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move on to some like important things that people need to be aware of what's going on at the moment. So there has been this cryptocurrency ticker. I don't know if you guys have a ticker up in your little icons bar on your computer, but that covers crypto prices. But one of them called CoinTicker apparently has been installing 2 backdoors on Apple Macs, and with the potential of key logging and getting private keys and all of that. So Apple just announced that was a really big, dangerous thing that's going on, and that's pretty terrifying for me. What are your thoughts?
Don't download stuff.
Yeah, this is something that's happened a lot. I mean, KuCoin Telegram group had this issue where people were posting SCR scripts into the channel to get people to download for whatever reason. And people just click on them in the channel and download it. I mean, the Telegram groups I manage sees spammers popping in and sharing these constantly in hopes that some person will randomly download it and load it onto their computer.
Yeah.
It's just, you need to know what you're doing on your computer, and even better, don't keep any large amounts of crypto on the computer you use on a day-to-day basis. Because then even if you are foolish and mistakenly download something like this, they still can't take all your money.
And 2FA.
Absolutely. And there have been there are a lot of these things. Like it is worrying that one of these tickers that's been around for a while and people have been downloading, like it's taken so long for people to actually look into it. You know, maybe be more careful with the apps that you're using. Maybe don't just take your friends' advice when they say, oh, this makes it easier to track the price. Go ahead and download it. I've been using it. Unless that friend is a developer who said, I've actually looked into this and it looks safe. Or, you know, it's open source and I've had a look at the code and it looks pretty legit. If they're just saying from a user perspective, oh, it's easy to use, that's probably not a good enough guarantee for you to be going ahead.
And while we're on the Apple subject, they shut down a big podcast this week, a big crypto podcast. And then I'm not sure because I haven't had the chance to really have a look. I just saw it as a headline. They've now put it back on. Does anyone have any information as to why? Like, was the person just being a rat bag, or was this just Apple going, no, you're bad?
Well, that particular podcast was like number 4 in financial podcasts for that episode rather. So it was way up on the charts, which was exposing crypto stuff to people who wouldn't otherwise be exposed to it. And I fully expect that's why it came to somebody's mind, and some little censor at Apple went, oh, that can't be right. And then he has enough of an audience that they came back within a few hours after that. But that's
crazy.
Yeah.
So let's move on. And the moral of this story is just be really careful with what you're downloading onto your computer.
Apple, be careful.
Yeah, it's so funny that Apple is this closed system that everyone sort of takes to be a lot safer because of that. But really, be careful of that. So I do want to mention, guys. So William Shatner. Let's just mention that in passing. So I have a little bit to say about this. So he puts out this tweet at Vitalik Buterin. Thumbs up. You know, this is like no one really knows how old he is. He's like 80 plus, I'm presuming, guy, and he's like into crypto. So who here thinks William Shatner is in control of his own Twitter account? Raise your hand if anyone thinks that he was the one who tweeted these things.
I think he's having one of these meltdowns that all these older celebrities have. He's just gone like he's just stopped wiring. It's just gone short circuit, and he's
just like randomly clicking accounts. And
it's like it's like just pressing buttons randomly, like an old Star Trek geriatric. He's just lost in space.
So, like, it wasn't just a thumbs up. He then went on to clarify, because he got a lot of flack from the community. He says that as a coder, go develop your own blockchain technology where you can be 1,000% sure of decentralization, or shove money in a mattress. I hear that's only overseen by the Begbud community. Then he's talking about, like, his viewpoints don't take into account the fact that the code has to be audited by an auditing firm and approved by a consortium, or it doesn't get accepted. He thinks it exists in a bubble. That's why we have ERC20, ERC721, ERC 171. I mean, it's just like it goes on with all this technical speak. I mean,
you recognize, sorry to interrupt, you recognize 1701, right? Please say you know what that number means.
I mean, do you think William Shatner knows what any of this means? Sorry,
yes,
go ahead and explain what
NCC 1701, that's the Enterprise.
Well done. Thank you.
It was some technical jargon that I'm like, I don't know what this is.
I saw an interview with him and Patrick Stewart a little while ago, and they were talking, and they asked him, like, William Shatner, what did he think of Next Generation? And he was like, I never saw it.
No, but he was a great, hilarious actor. I mean, there's the traditional Shatner pause, and they asked him about it in an interview one time. He's like, "Yeah, I just kept forgetting my lines."
So I had the great pleasure of meeting Mr. Shatner last year. Last year I met him at Freedom Fest, and he gave a talk. And you think, okay, William Shatner, he's going to give a talk about about Star Trek,
Spaceships.
because that's the thing that he's known for. But apparently he went on this like long period where he's like, I never want to talk about that again, but I'm going to talk about horses. And so he's written all these books about horses. He's a delightful man, but I did mention him because I do like his Twitter feed. It's very funny. And so at the time he was writing, he was talking to astronauts and like saying fun things like to all these space travelers, like legit space travelers. And I thought it was just delightful. And so I think I mentioned something like that to him and said like, oh, it's so cool, the tweet you made the other day about something or other. And he kind of looked at me quizzically. He's like, oh, I don't know what's going on there, or something to that effect. And I was like, oh, okay. So when this Shatner stuff comes out and all these people are tweeting and saying, Shatner gets it, guys. How can this 80-plus-year-old man get it? And politicians don't. It's like, not quite sure he is, but he's delightful regardless. So let's not hate on the Shatner, because he's adorable.
It made my day yesterday. It totally made my day yesterday, regardless of if he did the tweet or not.
Absolutely agree. And I don't know if you guys know the song Common People by Pulp, but his rendition is just the bomb. It is amazing. That's how I discovered him. I'd never seen any Star Trek before that song came out. And then I heard that song and I was like, who is this man? And then found out that he was involved in this other very famous thing that I'd never seen. So then I became a fan of his, but it was only through that song. But anyway, enough of Shatner. Let's talk a little bit about how markets are doing, and then we might have some final words about the Bitcoin Cash fork at the end. So Craig, you run a podcast that talks about market movements. Do you want to take the reins and just give us a rundown of what's happened this week?
Yeah, so we'll just talk about Bitcoin to kick it off, really. I mean, we've been in a range between 6,100 and 6,830. So it's been about a $700 range for quite some time now. And outside of that, we haven't seen since sort of June any real momentum to either side. There was a little bit of a push up in July. And since that, we went straight up, then we went straight back down. And this is where the range started. This week, it was starting to look, and last night, as a matter of fact, it started to look a lot more likely that we might see a break in this consolidations tradition. And what I mean by that is that we've been seeing it just really messy. The intraday trends have been starting, and then as soon as they start, they reverse or they stop trending. And it's been really frustrating because, I've had to change the way that I trade, which is, in crypto especially, I'll tend to scale out to minimize risk, then look for a bigger move because we get them here, right? But now I'm looking for 1-to-1, 2-to-1, just in and out, bang, 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 bang. I was looking at this week going, last night before I went to bed, I'm looking at the 12-hour chart and going, we have a chance here to set the third higher low. And if we then move to a higher high, it would have just shown some consistency in direction for more than just a little period of time. That didn't happen. It's continued to dip. It's not bad. We could still see it, but the further we fall, the more difficult it becomes. So Bitcoin especially, just seems like it just wants to hang out in this range between 61 and 68.31 until we see otherwise. Those are the levels that sort of stifle the upside or downside.
I have a question for you. So a lot of people refer to the last year as this bear market. Thank you so much, Julio, who says great combination of crypto minds. Great show in the super chat there. I really appreciate that. But question about the this reference to this bear market. So how long was crypto actually above 6,500? How long did that last before it came down? Because it just seems like we were up there for a hot second and then we went back to this price that is way above. Didn't we start the start of last year at around 1,000 and then it went from that to 20,000 and then is comfortably at 6? It's kind of not a bear market to me, but I'd love your thoughts.
Look, it depends how you look at it. Long term, if you look at a monthly chart, say, which I do, we're back into a point at which I consider to be equilibrium. It's back into a zone that I call the cradle zone, which I trade from. So on the month, people don't have perspective. That's the issue. They want it now, right? They just want it always to shoot up to the sky and just keep on moving forever in that direction. And it's always going to be different this time. And it's, this is just the way the world works. But it's not. It's never different. It's always the same. And what we've seen, look, for somebody who actually trades, watching Bitcoin through December, after 15,000, it was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. And there were lots of opportunities to see that and exit your trades at that point. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to people that didn't, because I know that I have a skill set that not everybody does have. But the bear market, the talk of a bear market, this is a healthy pullback. I'm loving seeing the consolidation, not from a trading point of view, but from a believer in the space point of view. We're seeing people develop and build and progress the space, as opposed to pander to hype cycles to try and get their token onto a listing so it goes up and all their Telegram followers go, hurrah. So I don't mind what's going on. Right now we have a series of lower highs and people look at that and go, oh, we're in a downtrend. And it's certainly come off this year, but they're being really negative. And that might just be where the headspace is, because you've got to look at the other side of it. We also have a series of higher lows. We're doing like a pincer movement, right? And until we break out of that range, it's literally anybody's guess. So I don't do price predictions. I just trade what I see, not what I think.
$1 million
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. Maybe. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
this is all helpful for anyone who wants to know like what's going to happen in the market. Check out Trader Cobb on. It's available, I presume, on every platform like iTunes. And
Stitcher
and all of that.
TraderCobb.com's got all the links for the podcast and all the other media and everything that we do.
Awesome. Just as we close up now, because we're running out of time, I just want to go back to the Bitcoin Cash topic, because it's just a huge topic. There's so much to cover there. Now, Chris, I want to ask you, like, for the regular average Joe coming up to this, should we, if anyone has their coins in an exchange or anything like that, should they be holding their own private keys? And JR just used Super Chat and says, show my support for the channel. It's really cool today. Amazing people on the show. And to all of you in the chat, out of generosity, typos, but I love you anyway, even despite your typos, JR. I love you lots. Thank you so much. You're the greatest. I really appreciate that. So Chris, just talking about like what should the average person do? Should we all be holding our private key? Hi, Abigail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it depends on the policy of wherever you have your coins. Like I think Coinbase has said if there's a split, they're going to try and work to make coins on the other chain available to people. So you kind of have to just look and see what you have. If you own your own private keys, you're okay. So one of the things Craig has done with this fork is he didn't add replay protection intentionally, just to be an asshole. And so that makes it tricky to try and sell your coins because there's something called a replay attack. But there is potentially like opt-in replay protection, just given the way the networks have different opt codes. So there might be like people offering like wallet services and stuff that can help you split the coins if you really want to sell one side or the other.
Yeah. So that's useful advice for anyone who's wondering what they should do. And like, what do you think the outcome of this is going to be? Like you said before, very minimal percentage chance that Craig Wright is going to be winning this battle. But in terms of like the community, do you think there'll be less toxicity once we get rid of one of the like biggest factors in Craig Wright? Like what's because I know there's just people just think it's bad taste, kind of this whole I am Satoshi thing. And,
yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen in this space? And also, like, I mean, I noticed Roger Ver mentioned in his talk, like, on the one hand, you have Craig Wright writing to him saying, like, die, you get what's coming to you. I hate you, get a life, all this stuff. And then on the other side, you have people from Core saying, like, oh, come back to Bitcoin. We welcome you. So there's very different approaches right there. So do you think that once Craig Wright sort of leaves, if he does get disassociated or ostracized or whatever, that there will be less toxicity?
Yeah, definitely. And there's some, at least in the Bitcoin Cash space, there's a good amount of interesting stuff that people are working on and developments in the protocol that we can start like focusing on after this. I don't know. As far as predictions go, I mean, I think, I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin SV is not going to be valued as high as Bitcoin ABC side. I'll say that's like 100% prediction. But the wild card is whether Craig Wright tries to do like a 51% attack, which would be a big, asshole move to do that.
You've heard about Shark Pool, right?
No.
You've not heard about Shark Pool?
No, you can explain that.
They plan on supporting Bitcoin Cash by attacking other networks. Their goal is to mine empty blocks on any other network they can and sell the profits to buy Bitcoin Cash.
So his version of Bitcoin Cash, presumably, right?
Yes, presumably.
He's the only one who endorses this stuff. Yeah, so I mean that's just how nasty of a person he is. I'm skeptical he even has enough hashing power to do that type of 51% attack. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. And then there's another wild card there too with Jihan Wu. Has like probably 10 times more hashing power than Craig Wright does. So I don't know if he's probably not, but he probably won't need to.
The immaturity of this whole thing. That's what is annoying about this space at times. Like, why can't we all just get along and act like adults? Like, there is no good business being done here. But like, if you look at this, what's going on, this saga, right? There's nothing positive that comes of it. There's just people getting confused, misinformation, nastiness, personal attacks. Like, are you kidding me? Like, is this the first time they've ever done anything in their life outside of just sort of, I don't know, pat a cat and go, you know what I mean? Like, what is the benefit of this? What is the purpose of this? It just seems completely pointless, very immature. And I want to see the guy just get lost so we can focus. Look at all the time we spent talking about this douchebag. We could be talking about things that actually matter, but we're talking about some guy with the same name as me that is doing the name. I'm taking the Craig out of his name. All right. I have that name. I've literally just removed Craig from Craig Wright. He's now called Wright, but he's wrong.
Well said. So on that kumbaya note of let's all be friends, I do want to take a moment to thank everyone in the chat. You guys have been awesome. Chris, everyone is sending a lot of love to Abigail, who has been very vocal during this chat. She has a lot to say and it's very important. Obviously, almost as important as the chickens I interviewed yesterday, who also were noisy and had lots to contribute. But I appreciate you guys all being here. If you want to hear about what's going on in the Bitcoin Cash world and what's going on with the fork, I will be doing a live stream with Chris next week. So you guys can tune in. We'll be talking for an hour about what's going on. In fact, we may even do 2 shows. We'll do one just before the fork and then one afterwards, giving you a recap of where everything's headed and projections and all of that. So thank you so much for being here. It is really, really great to have you all here. And for you guys, Zaphoid, Chris, Craig, I really appreciate you being here, sharing your expertise. You're wonderful. Can you guys just all go through and let people know where they can find you if they want to stay in touch? Start with you, Zaphoid.
All right, I'm Zaphoid with SmartCash. You can check out my project at smartcash.cc as the dog yells in my ears.
Abigail,
and you can
is
look me
so
up on.
Beautiful.
It's okay, a lot quieter than my new child is it sometimes. But that's what 1 month does for you. But at any rate, check me out at Zaphoid on Twitter, Telegram, and go to discord.smartcash.cc and you can chat with me there too.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, probably Chris Pacia on Twitter is probably the best place to find me.
Well, the best question is where can we find Abigail? And anyone who was sending bad thoughts to Abigail for being noisy, you clearly haven't met this dog. She is adorable. So all right, you put that back on mute now. We'll talk to Abigail later. So Craig, what about you?
Tradercobb.com, that's COBB for Bravo. Tradercobb.com and the Trader Cobb Crypto Podcast. You can find everything you need. I mean, just on my Twitter, Trader Cobb, Facebook, Trader Cobb, we just have heaps of content going out there all the time about the market. So if anyone wants to know about trading and how to do it or what's going on or just annoy me, then feel free to do so across those channels. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, everyone. This has been really wonderful. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thank you to the people who use the super chat. I really, really appreciate your help there and your support. We have JR from Exciting World Cryptos. You can check out his YouTube channel if you haven't. Julio or Julio you. But I'm not quite sure. If you wanted to send me a link, if you want people to check out your stuff, I'm gladly share that as well. But otherwise, thank you for being here, and we will catch you next week for the weekly recap or for any of the shows that I post in between. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll chat to you guys soon.
See you guys.
Sayonara.
Bye. Stop being.